Right then, United against City tomorrow at Old Trafford. So many talking points, certainly from a Manchester United perspective, going into this tie. Nemanja Matic, who of course used to play for Manchester United, talked about what it was like when he was there. At Chelsea, players acted professionally. They were punctual and were never late for training. But at United, it happened almost every day. Among the players who would always be late were Paul Pogba and Jadon Sancho and a couple of other players. And he would then continue saying, the rest of us who are always on time were angry, so we decided to form a kind of internal disciplinary committee with me serving as its president. I put a sheet of paper up on the wall where I documented the names of the individuals arriving late. During one particular season, we collected around £75,000 in fines. Mark, I'm guessing this isn't news to you.
No, I mean, it's long term. It's no surprise. I'm just glad that someone like Nemanja Matic has come out and confirmed what we've all said and written over the years, that the atmosphere and the attitude and the professionalism at times has been terrible at Man United. You know, all sorts of stories. We know that, you know, Paul Pogba was allowed to go to Dubai for treatment. Edinson Cavani was given a 2-week holiday at the start of the season by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So many stories of things that wouldn't happen anywhere else have happened at Man United, and the fact that, you know, Sancho's still there somewhere. And he's been there for 2.5 years, and this thing about his attitude has been there all the time. So it's Man United, isn't it? And it's such a shame that a great club has descended into this level. But it's still happening now, as we know, that players are taking liberties, and we've seen this week that, you know, some players aren't very happy with Erik ten Hag, but you know, they don't like a bit of criticism, do they? And some have played really badly recently. They're still being criticised.
Stevie, it reminded me of a story that you told me when you went back to Liverpool once, and Liverpool signed a high-profile forward who basically did what he wanted, came in when he wanted, didn't respect any of the rules, and how that has a crippling effect, almost a domino effect, right through the whole team.
Yeah, well, basically, eventually, the rest of the players, obviously the younger players don't know what to do, but there was 2 or 3 of the senior players who decided that, you know what, we're going to start doing it as well.
Right.
And so it becomes chaos, because you're trying to start training and not everybody's there. And quite honestly, this comes down to the manager. It seems strange that at the start of Ten Hag's time at United, he was talking about discipline. How if, you know, we joked that if you were late, I was joking that if there was 3 of them in the car and he got stuck in traffic, he wasn't going to play them at the weekend, stuff like that. But it was all about discipline.
Yes.
The way he handled Ronaldo, we thought, that's a good sign. This guy's not taking any nonsense. But it seems like now that was just a front.
But what's interesting, like, obviously this was Solskjaer with Matt, it just seems systemic. It just seems within this club, and no one can really do anything about it.
It comes down to the manager.
The manager needs to step up.
Always comes down to that. Listen, it's one thing to have a committee, because everybody's kind of had that.
Right.
Most teams.
Where the captain kind of gives out fines.
Something. But this particular instance, this particular reason for being late all the time, 100% is down to the manager. But has to be the manager.
To Dan's point, I mean, this preceded Ten Hag, so this is about the club. This is in my mind a whole lot bigger. And how do you? Yes, the manager is kind of the immediate go-between in terms of what's culturally wrong at the club and how the players manifest that. But instruction has to come from the club, and they have to empower the manager to do whatever is needed to get it back under control, because the longer it goes on and it's allowed to fester, the more entrenched it becomes, the more difficult it becomes to deal with, and you cannot build a consistently winning organisation with that kind of behaviour.
Because it's happened. Go on.
Yeah, as Steve said, it goes the culture of the club. I'll tell you a story about back when Jose Mourinho started at United. Now, United have had a tradition for a long time, going back to like the Busby Babes, that they travel in club suits, you know, black blazer, club tie, and they always look smart. United, they look like they meant business, and it was something that kind of held United apart from the rest. And when Mourinho arrived, the players, the senior players, went to him and said, "Look, we don't like travelling in suits. We don't like it. It's uncomfortable." So Mourinho said, "Fine, you know, summer tour to China. Don't wear your suits on the flight." Now, people at the club have told me that the senior people were kind of like a bit upset by this, so they went to Ed Woodward and said, "Look, this can't be right. You know, this cannot be right that this tradition of wearing suits has been abandoned because the players don't like it." And the response was basically a shrug of the shoulders. Well, that's what the players want. You know, Jose's happy with it, so it's fine. So it's just little things like that. It's little kind of erosions of club traditions and things that have held United apart. The players win these battles, and it's still a little battle, isn't it, over a suit? You don't want to wear a suit on a plane, but if you're representing Man United and you get off a plane in tracksuits or in something different, it doesn't look the same. So the standards are just eroded time after time after time to the point where the players don't think you can do anything because nobody at the club really seems to care.
That's interesting, Nedum. What's it like being at a club where player power clearly takes over?
I think the point that Stevie was making about how it comes down to the manager, I think that is the key part. And even though you want to be almost autonomous, like we hear about Liverpool and so on, the fact is, if people are crossing the line, and you know, let's be very clear about this. For some people, being on time is the most important thing, whereas for others, they just don't really care. But when you're working together in a team, everyone should have the same standard. And if a manager's willing to accept that, then you as a player pool, you could say, "Oh, we're going to fine you," but the player doesn't care. That's £75,000 raised across the year for people earning millions of pounds. Does it really make any difference to the people who are paying it? It's a small price to pay for that. But if the culture is set whereby you have to be in at this time or the punishment is greater than just money itself, then people start to change their behaviours. And I think when you change those behaviours, it's like Mark was saying, like, yeah, we come here and we are Man United and we wear the suit because this is what we've done. This is our tradition. Like, we're seeing Harry Kane wearing like lederhosen and stuff like that in Munich. Like, that's the culture of the football club. That's what they do. And I think sometimes when you don't have that sort of like hard rule for someone, players start to look at a manager funny. And a prime example, when I was at QPR, so we had a Delta Rapt who was one of the best talents I'd seen in football. But the years before I got there and when they were in the Championship, I had a manager who would allow him to play a game on a Saturday, then just take 2-3 days off. And then when he comes in, he's like, "Oh, I'll just get some recovery done before from the game that's just been." And that allowed him to do it because he was such a good player, was so much better than everybody else. But then it instilled this belief in him that he didn't need to try, this belief that he could do whatever he wanted as long as he was ready for a Saturday. And then all the legacy that he has in England is all based around being in the Championship, even though technically he's one of the best players that, could have been playing in the Premier League through that time. And the best he had in his career was when he was playing for Benfica, because in that club, the culture is one whereby they work hard, everyone gets in on time, you do the stuff early, you do the stuff afterwards, you do stuff after training, you work your hardest in training. And then out of nowhere, he's playing in the Champions League and he's playing some of the best football of his career. So I think sometimes that culture does really matter because it can help people sort of see a path which should be beneficial as opposed to one which just keeps them in a poor position.
We had a situation the weekend
about the manager.
We had a situation at the weekend where, Ten Hag has allowed the players to not have overnight hotel stays now because the players get bored in hotels. So they've brought in a situation where they now travel to some games on the day of the game. So Saturday morning they were flying to Newcastle and the flight was cancelled because of technical difficulties and weather. So they had to get a coach to Newcastle because most clubs would have stayed in Newcastle the night before a game. Good preparation. But because the players don't quite like it, they've changed that and it caused a problem. They suddenly had to change the plans on Saturday morning because the flight wasn't able to take off. So they had to get a coach and that eats away at the preparation. So again, it's this erosion of standards and levels that you see at most top clubs that they've stopped doing at Man United. And that is partly down to Ten Hag, of course it is. But the malaise set in much, much longer ago than that. And, some of these players have now played for 5 managers. And it's amazing that some of them are still there. Anthony Martial, he's coming up for 9 years at the club. Victor Lindelof, Luke Shaw, all these players that have been there for so long. And they've kind of soaked up this lowering of standards that the players that played under Ferguson wouldn't even recognise.
Go on, Steve, what do you want to say?
Well, just the reason I was bringing up the manager situation was because in today's game, again, in my day, money was important. And so if you lost money, that was a problem.
Right.
And that put you in line. Unfortunately, today, the manager has to figure out what can I do to this guy that's going to hurt him? But the one thing is it's not money. And that 75 grand proves it because, unfortunately, when you have a player with an attitude of being late anyway, when you decide to fine him for being late, these people think that lets them off the hook. Well, I'll just pay my money and then that's me, I've paid my dues. That's what you're dealing with. So the manager has to figure out, how do I hurt this guy? How do I really get to this guy? Because clearly taking money out of his pocket makes no difference.